Welcome everyone. We're just going to give it till 1 minute past and then we'll get cracking. So welcome everyone. We're just going to give it a few more seconds to let the last people join and then we'll get cracking. Great, so welcome everyone. It's my absolute delight to welcome you to the first event in our Tidal Power Express series. It's a very auspicious day today in the tidal sector with some big announcements coming out of BASE. So it's a great day to kick off. So we are the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. We are one of the UK's leading technology innovation research centres for offshore renewables. I'm Vicky Coy. I'm Head of Innovation Projects at Catapult. And I'd love to introduce my colleague Gavin, who works with me in the Research and Disruptive Innovation team.
Hi, thanks Vicky. Yep, I'm Gavin Smart. I'm ORE Catapult's Head of Analysis and Insights. So in this series, we are showcasing the companies we're working with under our major technology innovation projects. And we've posted a link to further reading after the event if you'd like to know more about our work in the tidal stream arena.
So this time we are delighted to be visiting Nova Innovation in the first stop on our Tidal Express. So Nova Innovation is a tidal company based in Edinburgh with projects around the UK, and we'll touch on some of those in our discussions shortly. But our guest for this whistle-stop tour is Simon Forrest, who's CEO and co-founder of Nova Innovation. Simon, welcome.
Thank you, Vicky. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you.
And Simon, just before we get into the detail, so we'll have viewers joining us today who might not be so familiar with the tidal power sector. So could you give us the Nova story in a nutshell, please?
Yeah, well, myself and Gary Connor founded Nova back in 2010. We've been going for 10 years, and we in 2016 installed the world's first offshore tidal array in Shetland. It's been powering homes, businesses in the Shetland grid for over 5 years now. In effect, what our product is, it's a tidal turbine. It's an underwater wind turbine, and it sits on the seabed and it produces electricity from the ebb and flow of the tides. It comes back to shore and we plug it into the grid.
Fantastic. So Simon, we are now going to take a deep dive into your technology. We're going to have a look at your latest turbine model. Find out a bit more from you how it works, what sort of locations you're currently deploying the turbine in, what it means for the future of the renewable sector in the UK, and all the advantages that tidal can bring. Before we dive in, I was going to invite the audience, if you have any questions as we go through, just pop them in the Q&A box, and we will get to those if we've got time. So, Vicky, I think you're going to share a model of Nova's turbine so we can have a look at it while we quiz Simon about the technology. So Simon, can you tell us a little bit about the turbine? Maybe start with the key components and I guess the component parts that make up the turbine as we see it spinning around in front of us.
So as you see it here, you can see the blades turning round. They basically are bi-directional blades. There's no yawing in our turbine, and they catch the tide in both directions. That drives a generator that's inside the nacelle. The nacelle is the white part. It's a direct drive. There's no gearbox in there. So it's direct drive to the generator, and that produces the electricity that's then conditioned and goes back to shore via subsea cable. The yellow part that you see is the substructure. It sits on the seabed, and effectively it's kind of dumb steel, if you like. There's no moving parts. It sits there, and the concrete blocks that are put on as ballast in the top hold it in position. So with the turbine, it sits on the seabed. It's gravity mounted, and so there's no drilling, no piling. And well, so far, none of our turbines have moved an inch, so it seems to work very well.
And so can you give our audience an idea of scale then? So we talked about they haven't moved an inch. We can also see the structure there. So how big is it and how much does it weigh?
Yeah, so you're basically the diameter of the blades is 8.5 meters. I suppose in layman's term, if I was standing next to the concrete block, it would be up to my shoulder. And height-wise, the hub, the center point of the hub, again, is about 8.5 meters from the seabed. So that gives you kind of a rough idea of dimensions, if you like. In terms of weight, the whole system's, including the ballast, is about 120 tons, but the nacelle is about 20 tons on its own. In the air, in the water, because of buoyancy, it's more like 1 ton.
So still a bit too heavy for one person to lift by themselves.
You wouldn't want it to fall on your toes.
No. And so the turbine that we're looking at now then, what sort of power rating is that? And if you wanted to power your home with it, what would be the equivalent number of turbines or number of hours that you might need?
Yeah, so the turbine that you see is a 100 kilowatt turbine. We daisy chain them together. So in Shetland, we've got 4 in at the moment. We're doubling the capacity to take it up to 6 actually in total when it's there. In terms of what they power in homes in the UK, that one turbine would do about 60 homes on average with capacity factors and so on. We're deploying early next year. We've already started work in Canada. The turbine is there because there's more electrical loads in home. It's probably more about 50 homes. So that gives you an idea of what they can do.
So your most significant project to date then is up in Shetland in the tidal array up there. So at the moment we've got 4 turbines deployed there, with a further 2 going to be deployed in the near future. We know that deploying in an offshore sector is complex, it's a difficult environment. In terms of reliability, can you tell us a little bit about the reliability of your turbines and your array and kind of the areas that you're looking at in terms of improving that too?
Yeah, so I suppose in big picture, if we were looking at kind of the development of Nova and our technology, if you go back to 2014 when we put in our first grid connectors kind of prototype, really at that point, what we were trying to show is survivability. Can this be done? It hadn't really been done before. And then with the array in 2016, we were showing reliability. And now we're on to the point now where what we're doing is driving down the cost. So with the 4th turbine that went in Shetland in August last year, it's been running over a year with well over 90% availability. And you know that matches to some of the best wind figures you'll see as well. So the reliability is now there. The challenge we have is bringing down the cost, but we're already on a very good trajectory for that.
And for operating and maintaining these sort of devices, you mentioned, and we can see that they're subsea. What are your strategies for that? How do you look after them? So when you do have to go out and undertake planned maintenance, how does that work for you?
Yeah, well, the first thing I suppose to say is that we go for reliability. What we don't want to be doing is taking these things in and out. Our original turbines were designed for 6 months intervals of doing maintenance. Then we went to 1 year. Our latest turbines are hitting almost 2 years, and the one that you see in front of you is designed for a 2-year maintenance interval. We have designed them in such a way that they're modular. We can use small boats to go out and do it. Effectively, from what you see before you just now, the white part in the cell, it pops, it comes to the surface, and we can put it on the back of the boat to do any maintenance or bring it back to shore, and then we redeploy it. So the whole thing is designed for ease of manufacturability, and 2, logistics, and then 3, ease of maintenance.
And in terms of environmental and visual impact, so one objection that people sometimes have of onshore and offshore wind is its visual impact. Obviously in the tidal sector, that's slightly different. So can you tell us a bit about what the effects might be either visually or on the environment from deploying an array of your turbines?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big, huge advantages that we have. I wish I could actually show you the picture. We do show you a picture of our power plant up in Shetland, and it's just a view of the sound, a photograph of the sound. You can't see it. It's kind of spot the tidal power station. Everything's subsea. It has no visual impact, no navigational hazard. We're in quite a busy shipping channel where we are in the Blue Mull Sound, and the ships and the boats just travel right over the top of them. And what that did, and that really came from the early sort of specification of the technology, where we spoke to stakeholders. And when we went to Shetland, I mean, before we spoke to government or the Crown Estate or anyone else, we spoke to the Shetland Fishermen Association, and we asked them, if we're looking to do this, you know, what would you require to not object or to get behind it? And actually, they were very, very helpful. And one of the things they said is, don't have it in the surface, make it subsea. And we followed that, we took that on board. And it's really, what that's done is it's helped with consenting, because it's seen generally the acceptance from communities and the public is very, very high, because they don't see it. And now, because we've been operating it for so long, we have an independent regulator who said that it works in harmony with the environment as well. So really, in terms of consent, doing that, putting it subsea, and also taking the time to understand what people think about it has meant that future consenting has been so much easier.
Yeah. And in terms of the depth of water then, so what sort of depth, you said it's 8 meters to the hub height from the seabed, how, sort of what depth to the blade tops is it from the water surface? So what's the draft above that allows that shipping to continue?
Well, the draft we have in Shetland is over 15 metres, and we can do less elsewhere. That's what we were asked to do by the fishermen. I mean, we will look at sites where the depth is 15 metres, and we're looking at a site where it's 200 metres. So our technology can go in shallow water, deep water, but also because of the scale that we've done, 100 kilowatts, we can go into estuaries and also run of river. Now, we don't have the rivers in the UK that you get on the continent, but continental rivers such as the St. Lawrence and so on, this can be deployed there and actually work very well in that environment.
And in terms of optimizing the locations of the turbines, how do you select where to put them to extract the maximum amount of energy out of the tidal flows?
Yep. Well, we do a lot of measurement of tidal flows, and we work with you guys in terms of modelling and so on, in terms of citing it, and that's absolutely essential, and has actually saved us a lot of money and improved our design as we go along. The other thing we do as well is we go back, and whenever we go to a new site, is we speak to the locals who know it, and there's the true story of what happened in Shetland. One of the fishermen took us out 10 years ago when we went up to the site, and we were out on the water and going up and down, which is a 6 mile long sound. And we asked him, if you were going to put these in, where would you put the first one? And he took us over the site, hovered over the spot, and we were in the tidal race it was running at the time, and took a little printout of where it was. And 10 years later, with all the data, all the measurement, all the modelling you guys have done, that spot was 5 meters out from what we say. And actually, my money would probably be in him being right rather than us. So that just shows you the benefit that local knowledge can give as well.
Yeah, indeed. So another question that we've got in the chat from the audience is around the number of blades. So often we see wind turbines with 3 blades, and also that can be common in tidal turbines as well. But you guys have gone for a 2-bladed design. What's the reasoning behind that?
I suppose learning by doing is the honest answer. The first turbine that we put in, the grid connected one, I mentioned earlier that we put in 2014, around for two years. I mean, it worked really well. It had 3 blades. But what happened is really when we were working on the boat, 3 blades is quite an awkward shape on the back of a boat. And if you're lifting up as well, you've got to take in wind, the wind at the time, sea state, all that kind of stuff, deck space, craneage. And if you have 2 blades, you can lie it flat on deck, which means the time that you can be out in the water can be, well, we go out in really rough seas all year round, 365 days a year. It makes it easier to handle. So there are lots of benefits of being 2-bladed. Most of it comes from that sort of deployment and just management, if you like, of the system.
Yeah, so I guess it's that delicate balance of the amount of power that you want to extract, plus handling, plus the conditions that you're deploying in, plus all the material costs, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, interesting to see you converge on 2 blades.
Yeah, there's a very slight difference. You lose a little bit in terms of energy, but actually adding on 6 inches on the blades gets you all that back. So it's actually quite an easy kind of calculation. So it's really done in terms of logistics, and also for exporting and so on as well. There's less space with 2 blades. You can pack them into containers, all that kind of stuff.
So before I hand you over to Gavin, who's going to quiz you on finance and economics, we've talked a lot about the turbine technology, but actually this is one part of an energy system that you've been developing that provides baseload power into the grid and also has world firsts like EV charging. Do you want to tell us a wee bit about that before I let Gavin pick up on the finance side?
Yeah, well, the start of it really was Tidal Energy, putting the turbines in, connecting them to the grid. But we quite quickly realised, you know, we were listening to effectively the economic ecosystem at the harbour where we bring this on, and there was a need for some power at the ice house, so we put in a private wire previously. Then there was a need for energy storage. The grid is not always on where we are. It goes down. We want to keep producing and generating. So we added energy storage. And what that gave us the ability to do was put base load tidal power onto the grid. And we actually end up supporting the grid up in the north of Shetland where we are, because we're right on the extremities of it. The other thing it does as well is it allows us to manage the flow when we put the electricity on. So if the tide is running at 3 o'clock in the morning, people don't generally need the electricity as much, then you don't get as much for your electricity, put it into storage, and then you put it onto the grid at 9 o'clock when you get more for your money. So it's almost a kind of simple arbitrage kind of system that you have. And then on the back of that, again, just being client-led, what does the community want? What the businesses in Shetland want? There's a need for EV charging points. So we put EV charging points direct to our turbine. So what we now have in Shetland is we have cars that are driving up and down Shetland that are entirely powered by the tide. And I think even going back, 4 or 5 years, that would have sounded like a possibility, but it shows you just how much energy is moving in terms of, just changing the way that we live.
Yeah, and I think all of us are more conscious than ever at the moment, actually, with rising gas prices, that having a renewable local supply of electricity into our grid is more important than ever. Okay, Gavin, I'm going to pass over to you on your finance and economics queries.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. And so, I mean, you've neatly kind of segged into the economics a little bit there anyway. So that gives us a bit of a head start. So we've been gathering some questions in from people over the past few weeks on social media using the hashtag TidalPowerExpress. So we're going to a mix of our own questions and questions that have come in for you, Simon, you'll be pleased to know. So I want to start talking about cost reduction. So our research that we've done kind of estimates that at about 1 gigawatt of deployed capacity, tidal power in the UK should be market competitive with nuclear and diesel. So can you maybe tell us a bit about the Nova cost reduction trajectory?
Yeah, so in terms of cost reduction, we've set out a plan, and we're on track to hit the European target, the set plan for tidal energy in 2025 of 150 euros per megawatt hour. And then by 2030, it's 100 euros. Now, at that point, that's really important because that makes us cheaper than nuclear power. And really, in terms of your value add to the system, that can be huge. The trajectory is now there. We now have enough points on the graph, and it's very clear that it's heading in the right direction, and we're confident we're going to hit those targets. The additional thing I would say is that because there are other renewables that have gone before us, if you like, onshore wind, offshore wind, we're not having to learn everything for the first time. So early offshore projects, for instance, had quite a lot of problems with cables. And there was a lot of learning went on about subsea cables for wind farms and so on. A lot of those solutions we've just taken off the shelf, and that's through help from you guys and others. And it's allowing us to come down that cost curve much more quickly.
And of course, I mean, I think the whole point about learning is something that's really crucial in any early stage technology. And I guess the other thing with early stage technology is about your kind of funding. And you need different kinds of funding, different sources at different stages in your evolution. So I guess, can you maybe give us a bit of an idea about how the sources of funding that you've tapped into have changed from the early days until now? And crucially, are there any opportunities for new investors getting involved with Nova?
Yeah, so in the early days, there was sweat equity, there was some grant funding, we had some private investors come in. And that's kind of evolved and developed over the years. We have had really good support from the European Commission, which has really kind of turbocharged Nova, our technology, and the sector. And it's been excellent support there. We had revenue support up until 2016. We've been without that for 5 years, but today it's actually just been switched on. So the timing of this webinar couldn't have been any better. It was literally 10 minutes before it started. So that's a real, that's really going to turbocharge the sector. It's fantastic news. And in terms of Nova, we're going through that equity investment stage. We're starting to bring debt into projects now as well. And that's the same kind of evolution that we saw in wind and solar and other projects. So we can see the sector maturing and really starting to scale.
Sure. Now you've touched on probably the biggest news story for us of the day, probably the week. And I know that there's not really much detail out there at the moment, but in terms of as you mentioned there, so we hear that there's a ring fence of £20 million being announced for tidal stream. You've touched on it there, but have you get any other initial reaction about what that means for yourselves and for the sector?
Well, we're over the moon about it. We had our plans because of the original announcement, it wasn't there. Our plans were for without the support. So the support coming in has just been fantastic news. And we are doing really good work and collaboration with actually other companies as well, really to kind of help scale this up, not just in the UK, but in other markets like France and so on as well. So it just really is tremendous news for the sector.
That's great. So what we mentioned there, but the learning happens when you deploy, but you need a market to deploy into.
We've now got a route to market in the UK. That's the key thing. Yesterday we didn't have that. That's one of the game changers.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And so we talked there about access to UK market. Now, obviously, the UK is one market. There are many others out there. So what do you think of the export potential for Nova technology?
Yeah, the markets around the world, there is, we're deploying at the moment in Canada. Canada have a feed-in tariff for tidal energy. They have a really good supply chain. They have an unbelievably huge resource as well. France, we will be deploying in France next summer. So we're working in mainland Europe. And we're working in Indonesia as well. Indonesia is just 17,500 islands that kind of straddle the Pacific and Indian Ocean, that just sloshing in and out of each other. It's probably going to be one of the biggest markets in the world for tidal energy. So this is not just something that's happening in the UK, this is happening right around the world.
And I mean, as you said there, so as with many things, the real potential is in that export market. It's a big old world, but are there any barriers to you exploiting that, or exploiting, maybe the wrong word, but for you succeeding in the export market?
No, I think the biggest danger probably was that there was no route to market here in the UK. Without having a route system into your supply chain, we have a very high UK content in our UK projects at the moment. But I think having that here helps that to build. But equally, there's going to be stuff that you build in Canada and deploy there, and also Southeast Asia. So we see this as being kind of hubs of expertise and deployment.
Great. Okay, well, I think I've kind of exhausted our main finance and economics questions, so you didn't get too much of a rough time today, maybe next time. So maybe back over to Vicky.
It was helped by the good news just 10 minutes before we came in. It was something very different I was going to say before that.
Simon, so we've mentioned it a couple of times, that kind of local content and the supply chain. And we know that your projects in particular have a significant amount of UK and Scottish content. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the suppliers and I guess how that builds into your projects and growth in the UK? Yeah,
so some metrics. I suppose the array we put in Shetland in 2016, world's first tidal array, we had over 90% UK content in that, which is just kind of a phenomenal figure. Now, that didn't really happen by design. We didn't set out to do that. That really came from the fact that there is a supply chain there that can deliver for you and then scale. But also, I mean, in any kind of business, but particularly in ours, if you're going to hit problems, there are supply problems. If your suppliers are close by, you can go and you can knock on the door, speak with them and get it sorted out. If you're bringing in steel from China at a 35% discount, yeah, it's cheaper, but when a problem happens, and they do happen, you're going to find it much harder to sort out. And really what that does is it builds the relationships for the longer terms, because you hit the bumps in the road and you find out who's going to be with you on that journey, who's going to help and work with you to do it. And actually that's what we're really built here in the UK, is we've got that supply chain that can now come, scale and grow with us.
Yeah, and you've had 2 fantastic project announcements this year in terms of growing manufacturing capability down in Leith and Edinburgh. In terms of the next 5 years then, thinking about cost reduction, growth and your technology journey, what are your plans over the next 5 years? What are you prioritising?
Yeah, so in terms of cost reduction, we see it roughly speaking, half will come from economies of scale and volume, and half will be from technology. The technology part, we've got very well mapped out. Most of it's kind of funded and in place. What we were really looking for is to get those economies of scale. And the announcement today is going to help massively with that. The difference being, at the moment, we have a full order book at the moment. We are looking for new premises. We're having to, move to a bigger place so we can manufacture these. But the difference between ordering 2s, 3s and 5s from suppliers and going to a supplier and saying, actually, can we order 2 a month for the next 24 months, makes a huge difference in terms of cost, but also how much attention you get from them, how important you are to them, and in the end, the delivery and the quality that you get. So really, that building up the supply chain and being able to plan to effectively a manufacturing line, that's going to make a huge difference. And we can see that's happened in wind. That was one of the big drivers, as well as cost of capital.
Yeah. And I can imagine that your phone will now be ringing off the hook after today's announcements.
To switch it off.
Yeah, and I think, we can see actually that we've had loads of questions through, and particularly on the technical side, so the ins and outs of the turbine, which we won't be able to get to in the last 3 minutes. We wanted to say thanks very much, Simon, for talking us through the technologies, and also to remind everyone else actually that this is the first in our journey through the tidal sector. And actually it's been a great start to talk on a day when we've had this really positive message about future support for tidal energy in the sector. So the next stops will be taking us to Orbital Marine Power, who are a floating tidal developer, and beyond that, CIMIC Atlantis with the Mayjan project, which is a significant project for us in Scotland as well. Gavin, was there anything else that you wanted to add at all?
I guess really just to say a thanks from me as well. So obviously Vicky, myself, lots of people in the Catapult team have been working with yourself and Nova many years, and it's great to see new horizons continually opening up. And as you said, today's a bit of a landmark day potentially. So we see the detail, but as you said, it probably changed the tone of everyone's mood. So I guess for me, just to remind people to submit questions on our social media channels ahead of the next lot in the series.
And Simon, any final words from you about Nova and the sector?
No, it's been a very good day. I'm going off to answer the phone and find out, like you say, Gavin, more of the detail. But I think, we came on with a positive message. The positive message is it was happening everywhere else: Canada, Indonesia, France. It's now happening in the UK as well. So, I think that's a good way to end the webinar. So, but thank you very much for having us, and thank you for all your help and collaboration over the years as well. It's really made a huge difference.
You're welcome. And thanks to everyone who's been listening in today as well. So don't forget to have a look at Nova Innovation's website and look at the projects that we've been working with them as well. And join us where you'll have another set of hosts next week for our orbital session. So Gavin and I will sign off now from our ant and deck roles, but you'll be in safe hands next week as well. So thanks very much all. Thanks for joining, and enjoy the next stop on the Tidal Express.